Shocking Betrayals Exposed. When did you uncover someone's plot to destroy your entire life? My spouse, Ryan, and I first crossed paths during a quirky community emergency response course, and we instantly clicked. At first, his family appeared perfectly ordinary. His father, Michael, was reserved but kind, and his sister, Tara, was genuinely awesome. But Deborah, his mother, wow. The first warning sign popped up at our engagement party. When Ryan stepped away to use the restroom, Deborah leaned over the table, her smile unwavering, and murmured that she'd waited too long for Ryan to settle down with someone truly deserving, and she wasn't about to let just anyone join their family. I brushed it off, assuming it was a joke, but her gaze was chillingly serious. After we tied the knot, things took a bizarre turn quickly. She'd show up at our place without warning at 7 a.m. on weekends, supposedly to drop off food, but clearly to snoop and see if we were both home. She'd blow up Ryan's phone with made-up crises. One time, she called in tears, claiming she was having a heart attack. We raced over, only to find her lounging, watching TV, casually saying, "Oh, the pain went away. Stick around for dinner." I tried discussing it with Ryan, but he'd grown up with her manipulative ways and thought it was just how she was. He'd shrug and say, "That's just Mom looking out for us." I was like, "No, this is unhinged." Things exploded when I got pregnant. We were thrilled but wanted to keep it quiet for a while. Somehow, Deborah found out before we told a soul. She showed up with a tiny baby outfit, cooing for my grandchild. I was barely 6 weeks along and hadn't breathed a word to anyone. When I asked how she knew, she just smirked and said, "A mother always senses these things." 2 days later, I was glancing at our shared calendar on Ryan's iPad and noticed out-of-appointment alerts. There were reminders for check-ins every few days. I tapped one and nearly fainted. They were planned calls with his mom, where he was supposed to fill her in on every detail about me and the pregnancy. She'd been having him monitor me and report back. When I confronted Ryan, he broke down in tears, admitting his mom had always been this controlling. He confessed she had access to all his accounts, read our texts, and had even put some family tracking app on his phone that he couldn't figure out how to delete. He said she'd threatened to cut him off from the family if he didn't keep her in the loop. I was furious but also scared. Who behaves like this? We agreed to lock down all our accounts and set firm boundaries. Ryan vowed to confront her. That night, he called and told her she had to respect our space. She seemed to take it in stride, which should have been another red flag, honestly. A week later, I started getting strange texts from unknown numbers, asking if I was still selling my wedding ring or searching for divorce attorneys. Then friends called, worried, saying they'd heard Ryan and I were breaking up. It turned out Deborah had set up fake profiles pretending to be me on social media and in local groups, spreading lies that my marriage was crumbling and I was leaving Ryan. The worst moment came when my boss called me into his office, looking uneasy. He showed me an email supposedly from my mother, who, by the way, passed away when I was 16, claiming I had severe mental health problems and was faking my pregnancy for attention. The email contained personal information about me that only someone close could know. I practically crumpled to the floor in his office. When we faced Deborah with proof of her actions, she didn't even try to deny it. She stared straight at me and declared, "Ryan deserves a true woman from a respectable family, not some orphan pretending to play wife." I was stunned, but Ryan lost it. For the first time ever, he raised his voice at her, shouting that she was deranged and needed help. That's when she smirked and said, "I've already spoken to Tara and Michael. They're at our house, waiting. We need to talk about Ryan's future and how we'll deal with this as a family." Ryan demanded to know what she meant, and she replied, "You think this is the first time I've had to protect you from a bad choice? Ask your dad about Jessica." Ryan went pale, like he'd seen a phantom. Jessica was his high school girlfriend who abruptly left town. He stammered, "What did you do to her?" Deborah just laughed and said, "Nothing she didn't have coming. Now come home, son, without her." Ryan grabbed my hand and we stormed out. In the car, he was trembling so much he couldn't drive. He confided his father had always alluded to his mom handling some issue with Jessica, but he never grasped what that meant until now. Jessica had been pregnant at 17 and vanished after confiding only in Ryan's mom. We headed straight to a hotel, and Ryan called his sister Tara, putting her on speaker. She broke down in tears, confirming our darkest suspicions. Deborah had intimidated every woman Ryan ever dated, starting with Jessica. She'd used some kind of blackmail to force Jessica's family to send her away. Tara revealed that Deborah had compiled a dossier on me even before our engagement. That night at 3 a.m., someone tried to open our hotel room door. When Ryan checked the peephole, he stumbled back, shaken. It was his dad, Michael, just standing there, silent. First update. If you read my last post, you know my mother-in-law, Deborah, essentially detonated my life with her relentless mission to erase me from her son's world. I wish I could say things settled down after we fled our apartment and went into hiding, but nope, that was just a warm-up. If you're hoping for tidy, happy resolutions, go watch some wholesome TikTok couple. If you want the raw truth about being stalked by your husband's family for daring to marry their golden boy, strap in. So we left off at the hotel, right? Ryan and I were rattled, holed up in a mid-tier chain room, grappled with the fact that his dad, Michael, had lingered outside our door at 3 a.m., not knocking, not speaking, just standing there. I still don't know if he was trying to intimidate us or genuinely thought we'd swing the door open and surrender like kids. Either way, it was chilling. Ryan was pale and restless, pacing by the bed, while I was texting my aunt at 3:20 a.m., debating whether to call the cops or, I don't know, rig a Home Alone-style trap at the ironing board. We did what any freaked-out, sleep-deprived couple would. Stacked a chair and my suitcase against the door, checked the peephole every 5 minutes, and called the front desk, whispering like fools. The night manager promised to review security footage and send someone up, but by the time they bothered, Michael was gone. Great job, hotel security. I'd barely slept, maybe 40 minutes, and when I did, my dreams were a mess of Michael lurking in the hallway, holding a butcher knife or, weirdly, a giant fish. No clue why. My brain's just fried. At around 6:30 a.m., the manager called to say Michael had left something at the desk for us. His polite but uneasy tone made my skin crawl. Ryan argued we should ignore it, but I had to know. So I sent him to retrieve the envelope while I stood by the door, phone in hand, ready to dial 911 if anything fell off. Ryan returned, looking oddly devastated, clutching a plain manila envelope. Inside were 4 childhood photos of him, awkward school portraits, a birthday party, that kind of thing, and a folded note in Deborah's handwriting. Her script was like furious cursive, all jagged edges and underlines. The note read, "Family is eternal. We'll forgive you if you come home and talk to us without her." Then, as if that wasn't enough, she'd drawn a little heart and signed it, Mom. I let out a laugh, the kind where you're half crying. Seriously? This is her move? Emotional manipulation via old-school photos? Ryan sat on the bed's edge, flipping the photos over and over, silent. Sometimes he gets like this, trapped in his thoughts, torn between loyalty to his parents and wanting to torch everything. I understand, but it makes me want to chuck something. Then the calls started. At first, I thought it was just spam, but then the hotel phone rang. Super weird. I answered, ready to say it was a wrong number, but it was Deborah, her voice all fake sweet and high-pitched. She said she was in the lobby, demanding to speak to Ryan alone, and that I needed to come down and face the consequences of my choices. I flat out said no and hung up, but she kept calling, our phones, the hotel line, even Ryan's and Yu's WhatsApp number. Her messages grew nastier each time. She threatened to tell everyone the truth about me, that I was unstable, manipulative, unfit to be a mother. She said she'd go my aunt, my friends, even my old neighbors, all because I married her son and refused to let her control my life. At that moment, Ryan finally shook off his days long, enough to send a quick text to his sister, Tara, saying simply, "We're in trouble. Mom's here." Tara, likely the only one in, that family with her head on straight, replied instantly that she was on her way. She showed up with her boyfriend, Devin, a towering 6-foot wall of don't test me energy. I don't think I've ever been so relieved to see 2 people in my life. "Tara, came bearing coffee and a couple of bags stuffed with snacks, immediately letting loose a string of curses at her mom. Right there in the corridor, Devin planted himself by the door, arms crossed like a club bouncer, silently challenging anyone to make a move. The four of us holed up in that hotel room for about an hour, passing around flimsy cups of bitter coffee and trying to piece together a plan. Ryan was still reeling, barely present. Tara kept pacing, venting about how her mom had completely lost it this time. I couldn't stop checking my phone, half braced for some viral post about me to surface. Devin, meanwhile, just muttered that if Michael showed up again, he'd deal with it. It was the strangest double date I'd ever experienced. Around 10 o'clock, things went haywire. Hey! Furious pounding shook the door, not a polite tap, but an aggressive, open this now kind of banging. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Devin reached the door first, peering through the peephole, before signaling Ryan over. It was Deborah and Michael, both looking utterly unhinged in the hallway. Deborah started shrieking, "Open this door. This is a family crisis." Michael just stood there, arms crossed, silent. Devin ordered them to leave, but Deborah began ramming the door as if sheer determination could force it open. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it definitely wasn't what came next. Deborah actually managed to shove the door open a few inches. Thankfully, the hotel lock held, but she reached through and clamped onto my arm, not gently, not let stalk, but a full-on grip. She pulled hard, and I pulled back, locked in a bizarre tug-of-war with my mother-in-law. Right there in the hallway, I yelled, "Let go of me, Deborah." Tara was right behind me, prying at her mom's hand, while Devin shouted at Michael to step back. Finally, a couple of hotel staff rushed over, trailed by a guy in a suit who I assumed was the manager. Deborah released my arm, but not before snarling, "You're wrecking everything, you foolish girl." "Okay, Cruella much?" The hotel staff warned they'd call the cops if Deborah and Michael didn't clear out, and Deborah launched into a tirade about how I was holding her son hostage and putting the baby at risk. For the first time, Michael looked uneasy but stayed silent. Tara whipped out her phone to record, and I'm praying that footage never hits the internet, because I looked like a sleep-deprived raccoon. The police showed up because nothing screams "Good morning" like 5 squad cars outside your hotel. Deborah was yelling at the officers about needing to rescue her son and protect her grandchild, while Michael shot daggers at Devin like he was a problem just for being there. The cops split us up, took our statements, and banned Deborah and Michael from the premises. Deborah tried to argue, but an officer cut her off. Tara's boyfriend sent me the video as a precaution. Then the adrenaline crash slammed into me like a freight train. I felt clammy, unsteady, and utterly done. I wanted to go home, but that wasn't an option. I thought about calling my mom, but she's been gone for over a decade. Ryan tried to wrap his arms around me, but I just sank onto the bed, head in my hands. Tara sat beside me, murmuring that I wasn't losing it, that her mom had always been this way, but it was escalating. She said she'd never seen Deborah go this far, not even with Jessica. Yikes, still reeling. From that bombshell, we checked out of the hotel just before noon. The manager offered apologies, but you could tell he was just thrilled to see us leave. I can't blame him, who wants family chaos. Tanking their TripAdvisor reviews, Devin offered to drive us anywhere we needed, so we piled our stuff into his beat-up SUV and sat there for a moment, grappling with what the hell to do next. Every option felt like a trap. Go home? No way. Another hotel? Deborah would track us down. Stay with Tara? Her place is tiny, and Michael has a spare key. Don't even get me started. Our only real choice was my dad's place. He's retired, lives in a big old house with a top-notch security system, and has never been a fan of Deborah. His place is about 40 minutes away, but it felt like another galaxy. The drive to my dad's was quiet, except for Tara and Devin softly discussing whether they should change their locks too. Ryan stared out the window, gripping an envelope of old childhood photos like it might explode. While I scrolled to my phone, watching, group chats erupt. People were asking if we were okay, if the rumors about us breaking up were true, or if I'd actually threatened to harm myself. Thanks, Deborah. I didn't even bother responding. I just wanted to reach a place where no one could follow us. Pulling into my dad's driveway felt like crossing the finish line of a marathon. I never wanted to run. He was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, radiating don't mess with my kid energy. I hugged him so tightly I nearly cracked his ribs. He didn't pry, just let us inside, handed me a mug of tea and said, "You're safe here. No one gets it unless I say so." Bless old guys, who still swear by deadbolts and motion lights. We crashed in the guest room and I finally got a few hours of real sleep until my dad's phone started going off. Yep, Deborah had found his number and was calling, demanding he send her son home and return her grandchild to the family. Dad hung up and blocked her, which is more than I can say for Ryan, who still won't block. His parents. I get it, kind of, he's terrified, but it's maddening. That night, the four of us, me, Ryan, Tara, and Devin, sat around my dad's kitchen table, eating takeout and compiling a list of everything Deborah had done. It felt like we were scripting a true crime podcast, except the villain was my mother-in-law, and my sanity was a casualty. Tara confessed. She was scared her mom might come for her next, and Devin said he'd call the cops if Michael showed up anywhere near their place. Ryan kept apologizing until I finally snapped and told him to stop. This wasn't his fault, or at least not entirely. Deborah's been like this forever, and no one ever called her out. I don't know what's next. We can't stay at my dad's indefinitely, but for now, it's the only place that feels secure. Deborah's still out there, making calls, spreading lies, trying to rally people to her side. I keep waiting for a knock at the door or another unhinged message to light up my phone. Part of me wants to fight back, share the video, go public, and let it all burn, but another part just wants to sleep for a week and pretend this isn't my reality. If you've read this far, thank you. Honestly, I don't know if I'm seeking advice or just shouting into the abyss, but getting it out feels good. I wish I could say it's over, but something tells me Deborah's not finished. She never is. Second update. Here I am again. If you're still following this chaos, you're a champ, and I'm sending you virtual coffee in solidarity because living this was wild and retelling it is almost as draining. This is where Deborah drags my extended family into the mess, and things get even uglier. We'd been at my dad's for about 3 days. It was strange, like being a teenager again, but with more cursing and less personal space. My dad's house is old and creaky, but he's one of those guys who still uses a legit answer machine. So there's always this odd beep in the background. I tried to keep things normal, helping with dishes, doom scrolling TikTok, pretending my notifications weren't exploding every 5 minutes with new drama. Ryan mostly stayed in the guest room, playing mobile games or pacing. We kept hoping if we laid low long enough, Deborah would lose interest and go back to obsessing over Tara's haircut or Michael's cholesterol. Yeah, right. The first hint of trouble came when my cousin, Barbara, called out of the blue. She's a couple, years older, lives about 20 minutes away, and we're not super tight, but she's always trying to play peacemaker. She started with, "So, I just spoke to your mother-in-law. Why is she saying you're," and I quote, "trapping Ryan in the house and cutting him off from his family?" I nearly dropped my phone. I tried to explain, but she kept cutting me off, saying she just wanted to hear both sides. By the end, she was suggesting I meet Deborah. Halfway, sure, let me negotiate with someone who tried to yank me out of a hotel room by my arm. I hung up and called Tara, who was livid. She'd gotten a similar call, except her version was that I'd brainwashed Ryan and was keeping the baby from the family. The craziest part? Some people bought it. My Aunt Marilyn, my dad's sister, who's always been a bit extra, sent my dad a novel-length text about family unity and how young women today don't respect tradition. I couldn't believe this was happening, but Deborah was calling everyone she could reach, spinning her story, and it was working on some. Ryan was barely holding it together at this point, muttering, "Maybe if I just talk to Mom, maybe if I explain." I wanted to shake him. Devin and Tara came over one night with pizza, trying to lighten the mood, but it was tense. Devin was scrolling through his phone, reading, up on restraining order stories, while Tara cracked nervous jokes. At one point, my dad snapped that if Deborah showed up, he'd call the cops before she hit the steps. He said it with a look I'd never seen, half deadly serious. Half I can't believe this is my life now. The next morning, the Betrayal madness kicked off. I stepped onto the porch for some air, trying to escape the smell of my dad's charred toast, and found a letter taped to the mailbox. It was a white envelope with my name scrawled. On the front, inside was a chaotic, half-typed, half-handwritten note from Deborah. She warned that if I kept spreading lies about her and her family, she'd have no choice but to pursue legal action for defamation and character assassination. It even had a cease and desist header, like she'd Googled how to write one and went wild with copy-paste. She claimed I was bad-mouthing her to neighbors and ruining her son's life.